This can't be right. Where's Mom and Dad's house? Excuse me, I'm looking for my parents.
Daniel?
Mom? Dad? What happened to you?
Your brothers took the house, Daniel.
But I've been sending you money for 6 years.
Son, we haven't received anything.
Then, who has been taking my money?
The moment my father told me they hadn't received a single dollar, I felt something inside me go cold. For 6 years, I had sent money home every month. Not once had I missed a payment. I had paid for groceries, medical bills, repairs to the house, and anything else I thought my parents might need. At least, that was what I believed. But standing inside that broken wooden shelter, looking at my mother's worn clothes and my father's tired face, I realized that someone had been lying to me for years. And I was terrified that I already knew who. Before I tell you what my brothers did, tell me where you're watching from in the comments. And if you enjoy emotional family stories with powerful twists, subscribe and stay with me, because what I discovered next changed my family forever. I looked at my father again. Dad, what do you mean you never received anything? He looked confused. My mother lowered her eyes. That scared me even more. I pulled out my phone and opened my banking records. Look, I showed them payment after payment. Every month, $2,000. Sometimes 3. When Dad needed surgery 3 years earlier, I sent $15,000. When my mother supposedly needed a new roof, I sent $12,000. When I was told their heating system had failed, I sent another $8,000. My father stared at the screen. Then he looked at me. Daniel, I've never seen any of this money. I couldn't speak, because every payment had gone to the same account. An account my older brother, Michael, had given me 6 years earlier. Michael was the oldest of the 3 of us. Then came me. Our younger brother was Stephen. When I moved away to build my business, Michael promised me something. Don't worry about Mom and Dad. Stephen and I are here. And I believed him. That was my mistake. I looked around the shelter again. There was barely anything inside. An old mattress, 2 blankets, a few cooking utensils, some clothes. That was it. My parents had spent more than 30 years working to own their little house. Now even that was gone. I crouched beside my mother. Mom, where's the house? Her lips trembled. Michael sold it. I stared at her. What? My father reached for her hand. About 2 years ago. 2 years? I had spoken to my brothers almost every week. Michael regularly told me Mom and Dad were doing wonderfully. Sometimes he'd even say, "You worry too much, Daniel." I stood up. Dad, you own that house. Michael couldn't just sell it. My parents exchanged a look. Then my mother said something that made my stomach drop. We signed the papers. I couldn't believe it. Why? Michael told us you wanted us to sign them. I froze. He said they were documents you needed for the renovations. Suddenly, everything made sense. The money, the lies, the house. My brothers hadn't simply abandoned our parents. They had used my name to make our parents trust them. I immediately called Michael. No answer. I called again. Nothing. Then Stephen. Straight to voicemail. I sent both of them the same message. I'm home. Call me. I didn't tell them where I was. I didn't tell them what I knew. And I certainly didn't tell them that I was standing beside our parents. My mother grabbed my arm. Daniel, please don't fight with them. I looked at her. After everything they had done, she was still protecting her sons. I'm not going to fight anyone, Mom. And I meant it. I wanted something far more important. I wanted the truth. I helped my parents gather their few belongings. Then I took them outside. When Mom saw the black car, she stopped. Whose car is that? Mine. She stared at me. You rented that? For the first time that day, I almost smiled. No, Mom. I opened the door for her. She looked at my father. Neither of them knew what had happened to my life after I left home. And that was partly my fault. 12 years earlier, I had left with almost nothing. I had been 28, broke, ambitious, and convinced that if I stayed in our little town, I would never become anything. Dad gave me $600. It was almost all the money he had saved. I refused it. He pushed the envelope back into my hands. Go build something. Those 3 words stayed with me. I moved to Chicago. I slept on a friend's couch. I worked during the day and built a small logistics company at night. For 3 years, almost nothing happened. Then I landed one contract. Then another. By my 7th year, the company had expanded into 5 states. By my 10th, we had operations across the country. I had more money than I had ever imagined having. But my parents didn't care about that. Whenever I called, Mom asked only 2 questions. Are you eating? And when are you coming home? I always answered the second question the same way. Soon became 12 years. That shame belonged to me. I thought sending money meant I was taking care of them. I was wrong. Money cannot notice when your father's voice becomes weaker. Money cannot see when your mother is hiding pain. And money cannot tell you when the people you trust are stealing from the people you love. I drove my parents to a hotel. Not because I wanted to impress them. They simply needed somewhere warm and safe that night. Mom stood inside the room staring at the bed. Then she touched the clean sheets. You paid for this. Mom, please. She immediately started crying. I hugged her. And that was when I realized how bad things had truly become. My mother wasn't crying because the hotel was beautiful. She was crying because she hadn't slept on a proper bed in almost a year. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat at the desk with my laptop and went through 6 years of transactions. The total made me sick. $186,400. That was how much I had sent. And my parents had received almost none of it. The next morning, my phone rang. Michael. I stared at his name before answering. Daniel, you're home. He sounded happy. Too happy. Yeah. You should have told us. Stephen and I would have picked you up. I looked across the room at my sleeping parents. Where are Mom and Dad? Silence. Just for a second. But I heard it. Then Michael laughed. They're visiting some friends. Really? Yeah. Which friends? Another pause. Why all the questions? I smiled bitterly. No reason. Then Michael said, come over tonight. Stephen's here. We'll have dinner. Perfect. I'll be there. I ended the call. My father was awake now. He had heard everything. You didn't tell him we're here. No. Why? Because tonight I want him to tell me where you are while you're standing right beside me. Dad stared at me. Then, slowly he nodded. That evening, I drove my parents back toward our old neighborhood. But we didn't go directly to Michael's house. First, I stopped outside our former family home. And that's where I got my second shock. The house wasn't abandoned. It wasn't demolished. It was beautiful. New windows. Fresh paint. Landscaped yard. A young family lived there. I knocked on the door. The owner answered. I explained that my parents used to own the property and asked when he'd purchased it. About 2 years ago. Exactly when Mom said Michael sold it. Then I asked the question I almost didn't want answered. How much did you pay? He told me. $240,000. I turned toward my parents. Mom covered her mouth. My father looked like someone had punched the air from his lungs. Michael had told them the house sold for $90,000. And according to my parents, after fees and debts, Michael claimed there was almost nothing left. Now I knew differently. The house money, my monthly payments, hundreds of thousands of dollars had disappeared. And that evening, Michael was expecting me for dinner. So I went. Michael opened the door wearing an expensive watch. Behind him sat Stephen. New television. Beautiful furniture. Everything looked expensive. Michael hugged me. Little brother. I didn't hug him back. Stephen stood. Look at you. Mr. Big Businessman. I smiled. Then Michael asked, so how long are you staying? I haven't decided. We sat down. For nearly 10 minutes. I acted as though everything was normal. Then I asked casually, have you seen Mom lately? Michael didn't even blink. Last week. I looked at Stephen. Really? Stephen nodded. Yeah, they're doing great. I couldn't believe how easily they lied. Michael took a drink. Actually, Dad was asking about you. I leaned back. What did he say? That he's proud of you. I stared at my brother. Then I said, that's strange. Michael frowned. Why? Because Dad told me something completely different this morning. Silence. Stephen's face changed first. Michael slowly put down his glass. What? I stood. Then I walked toward the front door. Michael watched me. Daniel, what are you doing? I opened it. My parents were standing outside. Neither brother spoke. My mother looked at Michael. My father looked at Stephen. And for several seconds, there was complete silence. Then Dad asked, why did you tell Daniel we were doing well? Michael stood up. Dad, I can explain. I stepped between them. Good. I placed a folder on the table. Then explained $186,400. Stephen looked at Michael. Michael looked at me. I continued. And while you're explaining that, explain why Mom and Dad's house sold for $240,000 when you told them it sold for $90. Michael's face went pale. Stephen stood. Daniel, this isn't what you think. I turned toward him. Then tell me what I should think. Neither answered. My mother began crying. And that's when Michael finally broke. At first, we borrowed some. Borrowed. We were going to put it back. I laughed. Not because it was funny. Because I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Michael continued. Stephen's business was struggling. I had debts. We thought we'd use some of the money and replace it. Stephen interrupted. Don't put this all on me. Within seconds, they were blaming each other. I just stood there listening. Then my father said quietly, Enough. Everyone stopped. I'd rarely heard Dad raise his voice growing up. He didn't need to. He looked at Michael. I trusted you. Then Stephen. I trusted both of you. Neither could look at him. Dad's next words hurt more than anything I'd heard all day. You didn't just take our house. He pointed toward me. You stole 12 years from your brother. I looked at him. Dad's eyes filled with tears. Every time your mother wanted to call Daniel because things were bad, they told us not to bother you. Mom nodded. They said you were too busy. Michael whispered. Mom. She shook her head. No. It was the first time I'd heard her say it firmly. No more. I had already spoken to an attorney that afternoon. I wasn't there to threaten anyone. I simply told my brothers that the financial records and property documents would be reviewed properly, and they would have to answer for whatever they had done. Then I took my parents and left. Michael called me 17 times that night. I didn't answer. Stephen sent messages. I didn't read them. For the first time in years, my priority wasn't my business. It wasn't money. It wasn't even my brothers. It was Mom and Dad. Over the following weeks, professionals helped us reconstruct what had happened. The truth was worse than I'd expected. My brothers had spent almost everything. Bad investments. Debt. Expensive purchases. Trying to live lives they couldn't afford. Some of the money was eventually recovered. Much of it wasn't. But something surprising happened. My parents didn't want revenge. They wanted peace. Dad told me, money can be earned again. I don't want to spend whatever years I have left being angry. I struggled with that. But eventually I understood. Forgiveness didn't mean pretending nothing happened. And it didn't mean there would be no consequences. It simply meant my parents refused to let bitterness take whatever my brothers hadn't already taken. I bought Mom and Dad another house. Nothing enormous. Nothing flashy. A comfortable 3-bedroom home with a porch. When I handed Mom the keys, she stared at them. Then she pushed them back toward me. No. I laughed. Mom, we can't accept this. Dad agreed. So I told them the truth. You already paid for it. They looked confused. I reached into my pocket and pulled out something I had kept for 12 years. An old envelope. Dad recognized it immediately. The envelope he'd given me when I left home. The one containing $600. I had spent the money years ago, but I kept the envelope. I handed it to him. You told me to go build something. Dad's eyes filled with tears. I did. I looked at the house. I did. Then I looked at both of them. Now let me bring some of it home. Mom hugged me. Dad joined us. And standing there between them, I finally understood something that all my success had failed to teach me. I spent 12 years thinking being a good son meant making enough money so my parents would never struggle. But they never needed a rich son. They needed their son. So I changed my life. I didn't quit my company. I didn't throw away everything I'd built. But I stopped treating family like something I could always come back to later. I visited. I called. I sat on that porch with Dad while he complained about the weather. I ate Mom's cooking even when she insisted I was too thin. And slowly, our lost years stopped feeling quite so heavy. As for my brothers, rebuilding what they destroyed took much longer. Trust doesn't return because someone says sorry. It returns one decision at a time. And some things never return exactly as they were. But my parents were safe. They had their home. And I finally came home too. Sometimes I still think about the moment I stepped out of that car carrying those gift bags. I thought I was returning to surprise my parents. Instead, they gave me the greatest wake-up call of my life. Never assume money can replace your presence. Because sometimes the people you love will tell you they're fine simply because they don't want to become your burden. And sometimes, by the time you discover they weren't fine at all, years have already disappeared. I was fortunate. I still had time. And from that day forward, I promised myself I would never waste it again. If this story touched you, tell me in the comments. Could you ever forgive Michael and Stephen after what they did? And if you stayed with me until the end, subscribe for more powerful stories about family, betrayal, kindness, and second chances.